The Wayne's World style. All right. Switch back to the laptop because they don't want to look at me. I mean, I'm here. There we go. Okay, as Orion said, I can pretty much skip this slide. I'm Kevin. The only thing he didn't say is that I am crazy passionate about the web, building things for the web, making sure that other people can build things for the web, and making the web a better place to run things. So I'm here to talk about the state of web development. I'm not going to be talking about the latest startup. I'm not going to be talking about your business model. It's purely the technology behind building things on the web. The fun thing about preparing this is that there are many, many types of things on the web. And lots of different ways to build it. It's more exciting and diverse than it's ever been. Things are changing at a more rapid pace now than they have since the late 90s. Actually, mid to late 90s when the Netscape Internet Explorer wars were going on. So let's go over some definitions. Oh, wait, how many developers are in the room? Okay, I'll talk slower. I'm glad I put the definition slides in because this would have been really scary otherwise. Front end. That's everything that happens in your browser. That's HTML, which is its markup. All it does is describe the content on the page. It says, this is a header, this is a paragraph, this is a link, this is bold, this is italics, this is whatever. That's what HTML does. So if you hear me say stuff like semantics, I'm talking about the markup. CSS says, oh, that paragraph, it needs to be blue. It stands for cascading style sheets. It's a way to tell HTML or other markup what it's supposed to look like. It's how we lay out things on the web. And then JavaScript is behavior. It's when I click this link, I don't actually want it to go to another page. I want it to go fetch something from Twitter and then put it over here on this page. Or when you click this, I want the compose email window to pop up in Gmail. We're going to talk about this quite a bit later. Backend. That's stuff that happens on the server. So when you hit enter on Google, it sends your query to Google's backend to go, what you got? And then it compiles all these results from thousands of different servers and then sends that response back to you. The web is all about requests and response. That's all it is. So every website that you've ever visited, that server is probably located in a rack, in a cage, surrounded by nerds, in a data center connected to a very fast pipe to the internet, somewhere in the world. And the more complex the application, the more complex the infrastructure to support it. Sometimes if it's just HTML, all you need is a hard drive and something that knows how to serve those requests. If it's Google, it's billions of dollars, multiple data centers, hundreds of thousands of machines all talking together, and everything in the middle of that. Content management system. This one sort of kind of explains itself. It's a system to manage content. But this covers blogs. I don't know if you've ever used stuff like Vignette or other huge, big content management systems. The blogs have sort of eaten up most of the lower end of the market. So WordPress, Drupal, Expression Engine, Movable Type if you've been around that long. Oh, now we're getting crazy. The marketing folks have had a field day with this one to the point where it has no meaning. It means either web apps like Twitter or Facebook or mobile apps like Twitter or Facebook or Ski Safari or Angry Birds, which is now a web app as well. So yeah, the lines are so blurry now as to almost have no meaning. Almost every web app, every mobile application that you do something interesting with has a web component to it. So Twitter on your phone makes the same HTTP request to get that data that Twitter on the web does. And what's great is we can use the the same technologies now that are traditionally used for web apps to build full functioning native mobile apps, which is extremely exciting. You'll see this. This has been a trend over the past 5 to 10 years, is web, we love building on the web, and we're really noisy about it, and we've sort of shouted down every other way of building things. Sort of like, hey, we like building this on the web, let's do it on the phone or on the TV. Like Microsoft's Web TV, if you're old enough to remember that, all HTML all the time. And it was on your TV. It was like the first real not web experience, which was pretty cool. Oh, another meaningless buzzword that I love the source of with a passion that, frankly, would get me arrested in Alabama. It's turned into a buzzword. It's like, it's Web 3.0, but it's not. It's just the next version of HTML. I'm bringing this up now because we're going to jump into this hardcore in a little bit. So, trends. Hopefully the definitions made sense. I'm going to try and leave plenty of time for questions, which is why I'm flying through this. This is where I see things as they are today. I don't like trying to predict the future. I'm pretty good at it, but there's no point when you have to use this stuff today. Responsive web design. With the advent of all of these web-connected devices, your phone, iPads, Kindle Fires, your television, your car, we need a way to make the content that we've designed for a desktop browser work on these other form factors, which are different resolutions, different capabilities, different connection speeds. I just saw a stat which, frankly, made me ill, that the average web page now is over 1 megabyte to actually download and render, which is obscene. I remember when I was really angry if it was 100K. That's tenfold in the past 5 or 6 years. It's not good, because some of us are still on 3G and trying to view savannahnow.com. Not to call out anyone who may or may not be in the room on my phone. Sucks, because it takes forever. Responsive web design is awesome. If you're interested, that book is pretty much the Bible for it. It's a way to use CSS and a feature called media queries to reformat the page based on the size of the screen and the capabilities of the browser viewing it. It's much better than browser sniffing, which is a trick as old as time, to go, oh, your Internet Explorer, you need to go that way. Or your Netscape, you need to go over here. Or I don't know who you are, I can't do anything with you, which is really a bad thing to do. There's been this war. I know, it's crazy. It's hyperbole a little bit, but not really. Between browser vendors and developers. For the longest time, Internet Explorer 6 was it. It was the browser that 90% of the web used, and it sucked. Microsoft slept for like 6 years on it. It was the de facto standard web browsing experience for 10 years. As soon as Firefox started creeping up and ate 15 to 20% of the browser market, Microsoft was like, so we should stop working on Office and start working on a web browser again? Crazy. And then now we've got the rise of WebKit and Safari. And Chrome is now the #1 browser. It doesn't have 90, it only has 37%. So we live in this polyglot browser world. And that means doing things the right way the first time and the only time. It means no longer building things just for IE. So if you come from an enterprise, sorry, stop it. Your people want to view your content on their BlackBerries, on their iPhones, on their iPads, on their Macs. They don't use IE. Stop it. That means stop using SAP. I'm kidding. I think SAP works in Safari now. The book is by Ethan Marcotte. You can look it up. Since there are only 4 developers in the room, if you're starting on a new project, insist that your designers and developers use responsive design techniques. If they don't know what that is, fire them and find new ones. And actually, this approach, responsive design, covers a lot of the buzzwordy stuff in HTML5 that I said we talked about it, and here we are. What's great about HTML5 is that it started as a guerrilla movement outside of the normal standards bodies because we were tired of HTML4 and the way the W3C was going, and frankly, Internet Explorer. And we wanted to push the browsers to do that. And what browsers have been doing for the last 10 years or so is competing on features in standards implementation. So Internet Explorer 5 for the Mac was the first browser to support CSS2. And then Firefox came along and was like, yeah, I can do that and add border radius. Border radius, my knees are weak. HTML5 came out of them and were like, look, we need more advanced features in markup to be able to do cool stuff. And so they added things like the location API, which if you have an iPhone, you've seen. If you use Chrome, you've seen, or Safari. That sometimes your browser goes, hey, this site would like to know your location. Is that okay? And then Google Maps just knows where you are. That's an HTML5 feature. Canvas, which was one of the first HTML5 features to actually be implemented, is a drawing app. So you can do two-dimensional shapes and drawing, and it's crazy interesting, and I don't think anyone's really used it fully yet. But there's some cool stuff you can do. Audio, it's taking things that you could normally only do in plugins, like, say, Flash, and doing it right in the browser. So you have a performant way to do audio and video on the web, in the browser, on a mobile device, without paying Adobe $600 for a license for whatever app you need. They've been rapidly adopted. Apple especially will just run. As soon as someone mentions something in the CSS working group and has the first draft, Apple's like, got it, done. I was in a CSS working group meeting. We were talking about multiple backgrounds, which is a crazy idea. You can have multiple background images on a single element. It gets rid of a lot of the hacks that we used to use to do rounded corners. And the Apple guy was sitting in the corner listening to the entire discussion, which took 4 hours. And he's like, guys, if we do it this way, it's already implemented in Safari. So that's how quickly things are doing and how quickly people are innovating on top of these ideas. We're barely even waiting for consensus anymore. We're just doing it, which is irksome to an old school standards person like me, but is really great for developers and consumers because we can experiment and prove things work or not actually in the market, which is great. Still in flux. HTML5 is not supposed to be final for another 8 years, I think, at this point. Doesn't matter. CSS2 is barely final, and it's 15 years old. So whatever, just keep going. What else was I going to say about this? So abstractions have gone wild. I don't get this trend, and I don't like it. Most of these started in the Ruby community, which I'm a member of, because we really like Ruby, and we don't like writing in any other language. So we've built these abstractions for other languages so we can write Ruby that generates these other languages. I think this is a horrible idea, but they don't listen to me anymore, and they just keep doing it. But what we're seeing is people outside of the Ruby community are now using these things like less and Sass, which adds some really cool stuff to CSS, but it also abstractions are great, but they take you away from what the end result is. And so troubleshooting it, you have to go, well, wait, this is what I told Sass to do, and that's what this actually, oh no, and then you have to actually look at it in a browser, and it's horrible. But you can do variables, the thing that has been hotly debated in the CSS working group for 12 years and has yet to happen. Sass just went and did it. So it does some cool stuff. JavaScript has its own in CoffeeScript. HTML has Haml. I think they take you away. I think as your app grows in complexity, these abstractions actually hurt you. So if you're working on a static site, cool, use Sass. If you're working on an app that's going to grow, don't. Just don't. Because you will eventually have to abandon them because you'll want to do something that they don't know how to do. I have to talk faster. So JavaScript. It's freaking everywhere now. It's all over the place. JavaScript was like, it was the only way to do crazy stuff in the browser because Netscape thought it was a great idea. Netscape actually had JavaScript on the server in the early 90s. And we're like, this belongs in a browser. And just did it. And we went crazy with it. We did all kinds of stupid things in the browser with JavaScript that crashed it. We're finally to the point now where anything that we want to do, almost you have to use JavaScript for. So we're seeing, jQuery, before that Dojo, before that Prototype, before that MoveFX, to do the things that CSS didn't allow us to do, like fade content in and out, move it around on the page. So jQuery is kind of the library of record. It's sort of what everyone uses to get around the document and do cool things and standard UI effects. Now we're starting to go crazy, and because we're no longer building web pages, we're building web apps, we need them to do appy things, like open compose windows and send things back and forth over the internet. So we've built things like Backbone.js and Ember.js for data modeling, stuff that, the MVC type stuff, model view controller, which I will not explain, but it's just how you represent data. So you say, this is a ball. This ball bounces, this ball is round, this ball is blue. That would be an object, so that's your model. We're now moving that down from the server into the browser. So you can say, okay, ball in the browser, save yourself to the server, and the JavaScript object knows how to do that. It makes these really complex things a lot easier because you work with basically the same thing that you do on the server. So everything old is new again. JavaScript is moving back to the server. And a lot of these frameworks they're sort of at the, I really want to use that. But it has so many bugs and it's so immature, I can't justify using it on something that someone is paying me for. So things like Node.js and Meteor, keep an eye on them. They are extremely interesting. But they are also extremely immature. Which, so am I, and people still pay me, so that's not all bad. The blog rules them all. Blogs have frickin' taken over. They've taken everything from brochureware onto some social stuff. I'm not sure that's bad, really, because it gives people a way to add these sort of little dynamic features to otherwise static sites, and static sites are boring. And this is where people might start getting offended if this is your job. Sorry, it's the truth. If it hurts, sorry. And air quotes are coming. There are thousands of developers out there who will gladly have you pay them a lot of money to install blog software for you. There's no actual code going on. They are installing a piece of free software, installing a theme, and installing some plugins, and saying that's development. That's not development. That's not barely even IT. That's installing stuff, which you can probably do on your own for free. What I would say is, if you are going to hire someone to do it for you, know what you're getting from them. Have them do real development and make something that's truly bespoke and for you. And if they're not doing that, well, then you can probably do it yourself. Google is your friend. You can find instructions for how to do that. Several web hosts will one-click install WordPress for you, and you're done. I really would try to install it yourself first. And then if you need help, hire someone to help you. Hopefully, no one's walked out, so I think we're okay. This is my favorite part. Databases are getting weird, and that's great because not everything... See, there's only 4 of you who even care about this slide. But databases are so awesome. And we were stuck with databases that were so bad. Like, they were designed in the 60s, back when they designed the AMC Gremlin, and that's never a good idea. Like, we're talking MySQL and Berkeley and all of the databases that came before. Like, we just used those because that's what we could install on our cheap web hosts. And now we've got things that are like, hey, not everything on the web is relational. Not all this data belongs in tables with columns and rows and foreign keys. Some of it's kind of dynamic and document-based and has these weird data structures that we can't represent in the 4 data types that these classic databases give us. And so things are going nuts in database land, and it's fantastic. The only problem is that people who don't know better are picking the wrong tool and then flaming out, creating these great fiery craters where their app used to be because they chose the wrong tool for the job. But that's kind of cool, too, in its own way. It's fun cleaning up those messes. Things like Hadoop and Cassandra and MongoDB, they've just turned the industry upside down, Hadoop especially. So if you hear the term big data, it's all the rage in the investor community these days. That's what they're talking about. They're talking about these new style document stores that can store and manage and process tera and petabytes of information like that. Because it's not select star from foo where bar equals. It's just, they're awesome. I wish you were all developers so you'd be as excited about this as me. But that's okay. Because if you look at it, this is my last thing. But if you look at like the rate of data acquisition for large-scale web stuff these days, it's unbelievable. The web now has these sites that are bigger than anything has ever been in the world of computing, in the history of the world. Facebook and Google, Twitter is getting there. They deal with massive data sets that change by billions of rows every day. Hundreds of billions of rows in some cases. Managing that data is insanely difficult, extremely exciting, and is the future. If you are planning on building a web app that you think might, that is social, don't, because there's no money in it. But if you do, you have to think about these things, because if it goes crazy and you're stuck with MySQL, unless you've got 18 computer scientists on staff in information retrieval, you're screwed, because you won't be able to scale. This is what I deal with every day, so this is kind of my playground. I love this stuff. Web frameworks grow up. So I discovered Rails when it first started way back in 2006, and it was a revolution. I cannot overstate how awesome Rails was in the world of web development and how it changed it. I'm getting choked up just talking about it. In the old days, and I come from the old days, if you wanted to build something on the web, you wrote thousands and thousands of lines of plumbing just to go, I need to talk to this database and turn this data into that. And then I might think about presenting it to a user. It was horrible. It sucked so bad. And I was the only front-end developer on the second largest search engine in the world for 4 years. And it sucked. I wrote this one single web app that all it did was go, tell me something. Here you go. Millions of lines of front-end code to make that happen. Now, a couple thousand lines maybe? Because what Rails did is it said, you know what? Web development sucks because we have to write all this plumbing. So let's define what we feel are best practices for building web apps and just make that part of the framework. And they launched it, and we were like, oh, yes! What we've been waiting for, and we all flocked to it. I built AOL's first 2 Rails apps. And they were great, because I finished them 6 months ahead of everyone else who had other parts of the project in Java. I was done. We got to twiddle our thumbs and make improvements to the app and actually launch before everyone else was ready, and it was great. But what Rails has done is it's made everyone else think about developer happiness, which is stupid. Why would you think about a developer's happiness? So now we've got things like Cake PHP and Groovy, which tries to turn Java into Rails. This doesn't work, but they tried, and which was great. And so what it does is it pulls the developer out of their cave a little bit, and it gives them time to actually talk to the product people and talk to the designers and be a part of the team instead of writing plumbing all the time. And they just keep getting better. And so Like, there's no reason to write that plumbing for yourself anymore. If you are starting, God forbid, you start a project in PHP, don't start with a blank PHP file, please. PHP, there's like, it's a hammer with claws at both ends just waiting for you to poke your eyeball out. Use a framework that tries to protect you from the mistakes that you are most likely going to make. Ah, yes, this is my life now. It's never been easier to launch a web app. It's never been cheaper to launch a web app. You can do it for free, which is crazy. You know, things that you previously needed a full-time sysadmin for to keep all those machines happy and at 78 degrees and monitored and all that stuff, you can do on your own. I did it for 4 years as CTO of a startup. I was my own ops guy, which is cool. We've got great things to deploy your app. So you can sit at your terminal, change a line of code, check it in, do cap, deploy, off it goes to production, and magic happens, and your web app is live. It's fantastic. We're also moving dev and ops closer together. We have this thing called DevOps. Pretty fantastic. It means before it was, hey, I wrote this crap. Install it. Hope it goes well. And then your ops guy would come back and go, oh, man, that was awful. You're like, oh, I'm sorry. And so it's like this 2-week window between dev throwing stuff over the wall and ops coming back and go, don't ever do that again. And now we're like right next door. Either dev is deploying or ops is actually fixing bugs. And so the line is sort of blurring between development and ops. And I think it's a great thing because it means much faster iterations, much better products in the end, much better, much more efficient, all that stuff. And this is great until you get to a certain size because some people are not cut out for operations stuff, and you could leave a fiery crater where your app used to be. But that's great because hopefully you've checked everything in and you have backups, and so then it's really easy. It's like a 3-minute fix. It's never been easier to become a developer, so for those of you who are not, and that's most of you, it's never been easier to get started. The development community has never been chattier. We document everything. We share all kinds of solutions. Back when I was teaching myself how to be a web developer while I was doing tech support, I had no peer group. Google didn't exist yet. And so it was many nights of tap, 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 crap, tap, 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 crap, tap, and of trial and error, which you don't need to do anymore. Now it's tap, tap, Google, 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 and then fixed, which is great. I mean, it creates lazy developers, I think. People don't know how to solve problems anymore. But I'm to the age now where I realize I'm self-aware enough to know that I'm just a grumpy old man at this point. And so a lot of my complaints about where the industry is just because it's not where it was in 1995, and I have to be okay with that. All this cool stuff has happened to it, and that's great. But the communities are out there. The documentation is free. It's online. The tools are all open source. Just go install them and play with them. It's so much fun. Things like Codecademy, the Khan Academy, iTunes U. Stanford is open source their entire freshman computer science course, so you can just watch those videos and nerd out to your heart's content and learn all kinds of cool stuff. It's also never been cheaper. Like I said, you can do it for free. Tools like Heroku. Again, create a Heroku account, create a little app, cap deploy, and you're done. Your app is live, and it's free until you get to a certain scale, and then, of course, they like to pay bills and keep the lights on. But there's always but, and this one's huge. It's also never been more complex. With everything that we talked about before, responsive design, working with mobile, working with CSS3, working with these frameworks, you have to learn 4 different languages to be a productive, to build a web app. You basically need to learn 4 different languages: HTML, CSS, JavaScript, and Ruby, PHP, or something else. I don't know what else you would build a web app in these days. Java, but then you have to go to school because there's no one writes books on Java anymore because they all write books on Ruby. So operating at scale has never been more difficult because of the amount of data that I was talking about before. You can run a fairly small app and still be completely overwhelmed by the amount of data and traffic that you get. Security has never been more important and more difficult because the data has never been more valuable.
Data connection lost.
See? That ruined somebody's day right there. You hear about it every day of LinkedIn not hashing their passwords and losing 6 million of them in a morning. One, that's stupid. Like, I know guys at LinkedIn. They are smarter than that. I do not know how they let that happen. But you have to think about this stuff. And that's the difference between being an amateur and being a professional is amateurs can get away with it. Professionals get fired for it, hopefully. Because it means actual money being lost and lawsuits and all kinds of, the Senate coming after you. Mobile has introduced a whole new wrinkle. We've got way more versions of browsers than we have ever had to support, which I think is awesome because it makes us do things the right way. And we no longer have the IE branch and the everybody else branch. We have one that has to work for everybody. Go faster. So for the businessy folks, this slide's just for you. I hope you appreciate it. It has never been harder to find good developers, and I'm sorry for that. It's a failure of our education system. It's a failure of people not realizing the awesome career that it is, and it's just lazy people, and now we have tons of people, like I said before, that call themselves developers. And there's never been more bad developers than there are right now who want you to pay them to suck. It's awful. And we started creating new job titles for bad developers. So these bad developers, as things have gotten more complex and they go, I give up, I'm going to go be an SEO expert, or I'm going to go be a social media expert. If you learn one thing today, it's never hire someone who calls themselves an expert. They're full of it. The only experts work for those social media companies. Everyone else is a user. They know how to use Twitter or use Facebook. You can also learn how to use Facebook. You can also learn how to use Twitter. It's not hard. My mom does it. My dad doesn't use Twitter. He does use Facebook. Don't pay people to be you on the internet. That is the dumbest thing I have ever heard. Just don't do it. And if I have SEO, I haven't sworn. I have a potty mouth, and I haven't sworn this entire presentation. I'm about to. SEO is bullshit. Bar none, flat. Anyone says I can help you with SEO, show them the door. All SEO is good content, well described, frequently updated. That means get a blog. Talk about what you do to the world in a human voice. That's all that is the entire secret of the SEO world. You need nothing else. The other challenge I think for you guys, I live and breathe this stuff, so keeping up to me is fun. The change of pace now is so rapid that keeping up is really going to be really expensive. So I think you can mitigate that by hiring folks who will do things like responsive design. So when the Kindle Fire comes out, you don't have somebody scrambling going, I need the web page to work on a 7-inch screen. Like, it just works on a 7-inch screen. Really? Yeah, because I'm awesome. So if you hire people who do that, and you create the market for those people, you won't get stuck with the I'll install WordPress for you people. So conclusions, the web is super exciting. It is so much fun. Like, I lucked into this career, and I've never looked back. Tech support started as a summer job. They showed me the web, and I was like, that's what I want to do. Let's do it. And did. And here I am, and it's fantastic. It's super exciting. It's just so much fun. And you can do more with web development skills than you have ever been able to do in the past. You can build a native iPhone app. All you need to know is HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. There's a best-selling iPhone game, Last Rocket, or Tiny, I think it's Last Rocket. All HTML, CSS, and JavaScript, and you would never know by playing the game. And that is the awesomest thing about the whole thing, is that these technologies are now transparent and work everywhere. So if you learn nothing else, learning HTML, CSS, and JavaScript and being really good at those can get you a very long way. The communities are mature, they're open, the content is there. All you have to do is find it and then use it. And that's crazy. So much open stuff, so much free stuff. Open source movement has changed how we build things, and it is amazing. So there you go. Questions? I wanted to save time so you guys could help me with tomatoes and stuff.
What are your thoughts on deploying apps on the cloud services like Amazon, with that elastic beanstalk where everything's dynamic? Does that scare you, or is that something you think is the right way to go?
That's one of the things that's still really in flux. We're kind of working on the standards for cloud deployments. I think there are, for the most part, yeah, it's awesome that you can start really small. You don't have to go out and buy $8,000-$10,000 servers and pay thousands of dollars a month in colo fees just to experiment. You can buy one tiny little instance on Amazon and just do it. What the pressure that puts on your developers then is rethinking how you build apps. Because when you build for the cloud, you have to build for constant failure. Like Netflix runs everything on Amazon, which is nuts. But they actually built this tool called the Chaos Monkey that goes around and randomly shuts servers off. And their developers have to write the code so it can cope with the Chaos Monkey. The Chaos Monkey is a feature, not a bug. And so you have to build for this kind of resilience that we've never seen before. And so it's great because it can be really cheap, but it's also more difficult. Having gone through it, having gone from the big iron world to the cloud world, you get to play with things like Chef. What you do is you start automating, and hopefully your developers manage their code in a source control thing like Git or Subversion. Hopefully Git or Subversion, or there are other ones. I don't know.
CSS.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, if you're in CVS still, I'm sorry. Time to move. But now we start to keep the definitions of our deployments in that same system. So the app not only says what it does, it says where it does and how to configure those machines. So if you look at stuff like Chef, Chef is amazing. It's practically magic. It's just like 8 lines of Ruby and you've got yourself a server. So cap deploy then, instead of just putting code somewhere, it says, the server for that code doesn't exist. I'll go create it in the cloud. And it just does it. So if you're just starting out, go cloud all the way. As you mature, the cloud gets more and more expensive. And so the last startup I was with didn't work, so we didn't get to this point, but the plan was start with the cloud until you get to some sustainable amount of traffic, then buy real hardware for that to reduce the cost, and then as you peak, you go to the cloud for the peaks in traffic. And so that sort of you end up with a hybrid solution, which I think is the best way to go. Come on, give me a hard one. Yes.
Easy one. What does CSS stand for again?
Cascading style sheets.
So Java, CSS, and HTML are 3 primary languages.
JavaScript,
yeah.
Java's not the same thing.
Yeah, JavaScript. Sorry, yeah. One other question. My database knowledge goes way back. I know nothing but flat file and relational. What are the 2 predominant databases now?
You've got document store style databases, which covers a ton of ground. But if you're familiar with the CAP theorem, okay, so it's a database design theory. That is, you can have one of these 3 things: consistency, and partitioning. I can never remember what they are. I always have to go look it up. And so relational databases try to do all 3, which makes them really, transactional. and it makes them really rigid in performance. Like they do one thing well. They cannot do reading and writing at the same time. They suck at it. So what we have are these new databases that pick 2 of the 3 legs of the CAP stool and say, I'm going to be, it's available. I'll be available and consistent, but no partitioning.
Availability.
Yeah. I'll be partitioned, and so we can go in, but there's document stores and there are graph databases are the 2 big ones right now. And you've got MongoDB, Hadoop, MongoDB, Cassandra, Couch was one of the first, and Redis are the document stores. And then Neo4j is the biggest graph database.
Document stores, what was the other generic form?
Graph.
Graph?
It's it's all about relationships. Like who you follow on Twitter and who follows you is stored in a graph database.
Is that why Facebook's made their graph API based on a graph model?
They coined the term social. No, it's not. Facebook is like crazy MySQL, and they've done horrible things to it to the point where it doesn't look like MySQL anymore. No, they call it the social graph, but that's really here are your friends and here are their friends. It's not really a graph at all. More? I've got 10 more. Yes, Brad.
For the business people, given the ease of access and the complexity, and this is a proselytizing / question, a developer has never been more important as part of your business, not a vendor. It may be a vendor relationship, right, at the back end, but it's really, they're integrated. There's not a separation anymore. And if you think in those terms, buyer beware. What is it that speaks to developers that are good at what they do in terms of being a business person shopping for good developers? What is it that you can bring to the table to land the right person, if you will?
I think one is having a stake, and that doesn't necessarily mean monetary stake. It means having a voice in what actually happens with the product and having input, being an actual part of the team and saying, for a long time, all developers could ever say was, I built that. They never got to say, I came up with that idea. It was, I built this thing because they told me to. As soon as you let a developer in that room where you're having the product discussions, they're much more motivated. And some aren't. Like there are still the gray beard Perl developers who don't want they don't actually, they are a black box. They want to work in a closet and have you slide pieces of paper under the door and they will slide code back out. Those developers are going away, and developers coming up now want to be a part of the team. They also don't want a traditional office environment. Everyone is watching GitHub now. GitHub has no bosses, no office hours. You work look up results-oriented work environment. Your brain will go. If if you're used to working in an office, it will change your life. It's what they want. They want flexibility because developers are still weird, really weird, and our motivations don't make sense to normal people. I've stopped. I just gave up. I'm just not a normal person. And most of my developer friends, not normal people. And so when you try to shove us in normal people boxes, we don't like it. And so if you can let developers be where they're happy and work when they're most productive, they will be the happiest and most productive that they can be. Hope that makes sense. Okay, because you already asked a question.
From a business perspective, and a small business perspective specifically, and this may be, feel free to be condescending, Kevin, by answering this. You spend a little money for an inexpensive off-the-shelf web page, e-commerce, getting it done. The mobile challenge now, obviously, because a lot of our customers are big Facebook and that kind of stuff. So from a mobile app standpoint, what would you suggest for somebody like me that's looking for that next step to go into the mobile world? Should we spend the money to go for, I may be using the wrong terminology saying mobile app, but have a more mobile presence as opposed to just trying to put up on your iPhone.
I don't know that I would say build an app. Build your site so it works on the phone, and so I can navigate it and actually buy your product from the phone. I think I've been thinking about this a lot because if I'm somewhere new and I'm looking for somewhere to eat, and I Google for restaurants near where I am, if your restaurant webpage, and unfortunately 90% of restaurant web pages start with that groovy French intro of the animated clip art chef walking across the page, that doesn't work on my phone. I'm going somewhere else to eat. And so I think it's, one, don't reinvent the wheel if you can help it. Get someone to come in and fix the off-the-shelf thing with some responsive design to make it render correctly on a phone. And don't build your own app. Because
yeah, not trying to go there, just looking for the advice. Thank you.
yeah, sure.
I was just going to say, a lot of what you talked about is about initial development, building it right the first time, building it from ground up, from scratch. And I think about a lot like building a house. If you can afford to hire a top-end architect, and get exactly what you want. A lot of my clients I talk to, we sit down, we talk about what they want. I say, well, for a few $100s, we can get you 90% there with off-the-shelf CMS and some widgets that solve your problems, but you have to do with some limitations, or go a few $1,000s and get you something custom. And especially if they're just testing the waters, I think the CMS route, plus it's a little bit more resilient over time. It self-updates and fixes bugs. If you write something from scratch and you find a security hole, they got to keep you on staff. And
I don't think there's anything necessarily wrong with using a CMS out of the box, as long as you understand that that's what you're getting.
right.
And so WordPress, if you are running basically something static and you just need to manage the content and update it every once in a while, by all means, WordPress is great. I use it for all my blogs. What I don't try to do is try to build an app with it. And that's all I was saying. And be careful who you pay and how much you pay to get it installed, because that's really easy. But yeah, no, if they don't need something custom, then that's why we have open source. Like now, with the open source software, I pull these building blocks in that I need and then glue them together. It's a lot, web development now is a lot more Lego than carpentry,
Right.
which is fantastic because Legos are so much fun. But in carpentry, you get splinters. So yeah, building like a business site, what traditionally you would do as brochureware or just flat HTML, great idea, do it.
Well, even e-commerce and some stuff like that, you can still.
Yeah, you can use Shopify, Active Merchant,
WooCommerce.
yeah, stuff like that. But then you're beholden to a vendor to do the right thing.
When you purchase this code, though, you can tweak it from there. You don't have to build it from scratch.
Yeah, their code usually sucks though. But yes, it's a trade-off. I come from the bespoke app development world, so that's what I think it's more fun to do that than install WordPress, install some plugins, ta-da, done. But probably 99% of people, that's really they just need a blog and a place to put the menu for the bakery, and you're done. And that's cool.
What's the resolution of that Apple versus Flash situation? Will there ever be one?
Flash lost. Yeah, Adobe lost badly. Because 90% of Flash use on the web was videos. And now you can do video in HTML, and probably 70% of the Flash use was on YouTube. So they're built into the iPhone now. So they had to go H.264 and go the video tag anyway. Yeah, Flash lost. Adobe realizes that. All of their new tools are HTML5 friendly. And, the reason we had Flash was because browsers sucked. And they weren't moving fast enough. And the market really wanted these interactive things that Flash could do. People went way too far with it. They built I used to argue with designers all the time. No, you don't need buttons that fly in from the left and make no sense. We can do that in HTML. Use Flash for what it's good for. And so what the whole rise of the iPhone and rise of iOS has done is made people go, oh yeah, we can do that on the web. So let's go do that, and we stop using Flash. So yeah, Adobe lost big time. But they're getting over it, which is cool. It's good to see them not go, yeah, I'm going home. But to actually go, yeah, they were right, and build tools now that create stuff that's standards-based and pretty slick if you look at it. Got 2 more minutes. Or 3. Nothing? Really? Tell you about my patent.
You want to, just because there's so many business people, talk general lean versus waterfall versus, is it approach it just as it,
Development process. I wasn't going to open that can of worms in the slides because I was at 24 slides and I hadn't even gotten to it. I was like, not going to happen. But yeah, so if you come from a traditional project web development, software development lifecycle, we're going to spend 6 months coming up with this 300-page requirements document. Then we're going to spend 6 months designing it. And then we're going to spend 6 months building it, 6 months testing it, and then we'll launch it, and it will most likely fail. Which is a horrible idea. But because development was so difficult, you kind of had to do it that way. You couldn't handle a lot of changes midstream. What we decided when development got easier was that it's much more efficient to do short cycles. And there's Agile. If you want to go look this up, Agile development, Scrum is one methodology, my personal favorite. So what you do is instead of this 6-month project, you have 2-week sprints. And so the product owner, business owner, whoever, says, here's basically what I want in this app or this thing. And then the developer, everybody gets together and we go, okay, we've got 2 weeks. We can do these 4 things these 2 weeks. Go for 2 weeks. You meet every day, what's called a stand-up meeting. And if they last like 10 minutes, if they last longer than 20 minutes, you're doing it wrong. Every person on the team, every stakeholder says, here's what I did yesterday. Here's what I'm going to do today. Here's where I'm stuck. I need this from Joe, and Joe hasn't given it to me yet. Not your fault, Joe, you're out sick or whatever, but this is holding me up. Can we fix it? That's it. And then at the end of the 2 weeks, you go, here's what we did. Stakeholder, was it awesome? Yes. Ship it. And then you repeat that until you get to what's called a minimum viable product, which is it's got a button for people to give you money. That's the purest definition of an MVP is it's got a button for people to give you money. As soon as you've got that, you launch it, and then you keep iterating. And the great thing about Scrum is in Waterfall, every group squeezes. They're always late. They always have a million changes, and there's always a fixed deadline. So development's timeline goes from 6 months to 4 months, and they're always late. So QA's timeline goes from 6 months to a month. And so you launch with all these bugs, and it takes you another year to fix them all. Where Scrum, you can fix them as part of each 2-week sprint, and it's made for sustainability. It's made to be able to do these 2-week sprints forever, which is it will make everybody on your team so much happier. The business people, because they get frequent check-ins and they see exactly where things are every day, all the time. For your developers, because they actually see what's on your mind. They can see the entire backlog of requirements that are coming up and have input on them. And then you get something launchable, hopefully, at the end of every 2 weeks. It's fantastic. So thank you. If you can go back to the laptop, I put my contact stuff on there. There you go. Thank you.
Big hand. If you could fill out the survey we have there, if you don't have it, somebody back there to fill it out and put it in back, please.